The Ballad of Andy and Barney. Andy and Barney were lawmen.
From 1960 to 1968, families of all sizes would travel down to the fishing hole with Andy Taylor and his son Opie. The city of Mayberry, North Carolina, not only felt real, it felt like home, populated with nostalgic characters that just couldn't seem to keep themselves out of trouble.
Are you ever in luck? Both of our famous peace officers are on duty.
Andy Griffith's widower sheriff character may have evolved over the first season of the show, but by the end, he became an iconic keeper of the peace who just kept cleaning up everyone's messes, no matter how ridiculous they became. If you've been wondering where the cast of the iconic Andy Griffith Show ended up, don't you worry. Here's the lowdown on the residents of the kooky town. From rom-com spin-offs to politics, their lives were almost as interesting as their characters. Almost. Whether Barney Fife was getting himself a new dog or discussing trivial trivialities,
I ain't got time to stand around here and discuss trivialities.
the role was absolutely iconic, and nobody is quite as iconic as Don Knotts. The comedian was 36 when he took on the role, and he won 5 Emmys for his performance as the bumbling deputy. He actually went on to reprise the role in The Joey Bishop Show and also in Return to Mayberry, a rom-com TV movie that aired 20 years after the final season of The Andy Griffith Show and served as its official series finale. Believe it or not, Knotts was originally supposed to be the straight man to Griffith's bumbling sheriff. It's impossible to imagine the roles reversed when goofs and gaffes just came so natural to Barney Fife, and it's a relief that everything was eventually straightened out. Or in Fife's case, unstraightened. After the show wrapped up, Knotts went on to star in several comedy films, including The Incredible Mr. Limpet, The Reluctant Astronaut, and The Shakiest Gun in the West. Later, he played landlord Ralph Furley on Three's Company. He also had his own sitcom meets variety show called The Don Knotts Show, though it was short-lived. You may even recognize him from the Apple Dumpling Gang films, one of his later and more iconic roles. Unlike his character, Barney Fife, Knotts was quite the ladies' man. The comedian was married 3 separate times and had 2 children. Knotts also dealt with a drug habit, hypochondria, and anxiety throughout his life, and masculine degeneration towards the end of it, limiting his later life performances drastically. Still, he was described as the most beloved person in all of show business. It's wonderful knowing that such an iconic character was just so sweet. He was worth an estimated $20 million when he died from complications of pneumonia due to lung cancer in 2006. He was 81 years old. Since Deputy Barney Fife was originally supposed to be the straight man, that made Sheriff Andy Taylor the goofball.
You're supposed to make him sideburns come up even with the hole in his ear. You see that right there?
Luckily, Andy Griffith realized pretty quickly that the dynamic just wasn't working out, and the character evolved into the competent sheriff we know today. The show was built for and around Griffith when he was 34 years old, and though he and one of the producers butted heads before filming started, he flew out to California for the taping, and the rest is history. He and Knotts were close personal friends in real life, so it makes sense that that chemistry translated on screen. Griffith even worked on the development of each and every script, though he was never properly credited. He ended up quitting the show to pursue his movie career, though he still had a year left on his contract. He later moved on to yet another iconic role as the titular character in Matlock. Though Griffith's obviously most well known for his on-screen career, he was a multi-talented man. He released more than one gospel album throughout his career and even a cover of the Andy Griffith Show theme. He was so established in the country music sphere, both for his own work and his general down-home country vibe, that he appeared in Brad Paisley's 2008 music video for Waiting on a Woman.
He sat down in his overalls and asked me,
You waiting on a woman?
Unfortunately, his fame ended up bringing him some legal trouble, or to be more specific, caused someone else some legal trouble. In 2006, a man named William Harold Fenrick changed his name to Andrew Jackson Griffith to try to run for sheriff of Grant County, Wisconsin. The real Andy Griffith sued him on the grounds that changing his name for the sole purpose of taking advantage of his fame in an attempt to gain votes was a violation of trademark, copyright, and privacy laws. Unfortunately, a judge ruled that since the name wasn't being used in a commercial manner, no law was violated. That wasn't his only involvement in politics, though. Griffith endorsed many Democratic candidates throughout his lifetime, including Mike Easley's run for governor of North Carolina, though Easley was losing the polls at the time. He ended up winning with 52% of the vote. The event was referred to as the Mayberry Miracle, and many people believe Griffith was the key factor in Easley's win. And like his close friend Don Knotts, Andy Griffith was a ladies' man. The actor was married 3 times and adopted 2 children with his first wife. It's less well known, however, that Griffith and his on-screen girlfriend Annetta Corsaut actually had an affair while working on the show together. Turns out their chemistry was pretty real, too. At the time of his death following a heart attack, Griffith was worth an estimated $60 million. He was 86 when he passed in 2012, 3 years after the opening of the Andy Griffith Museum. Perhaps the most well-known member of the Andy Griffith Show's cast for younger generations is Ron Howard.
Fix your hair, right there, wet.
He was a boy band, wasn't he, Paul?
That's right.
It makes sense. After all, he was only 5 years old when he first started filming the TV show. His father actually wrote his favorite episode of the show, called The Ball Game, and while on set, he was encouraged to ask questions and find out how everything worked behind the scenes. Howard says that that's when he decided he wanted to be a director. He said that he realized that the director was the one person who, moment to moment, day in and day out, really got to play with everybody. While he continued to act as a child and teenager, and even at one point played a character on a Disneyland Records album who got trapped inside the Haunted Mansion, Ron Howard really kicked off his career in 1977 when he co-wrote and directed a low-budget film called Grand Theft Auto. He went on to direct several well-known movies like Willow, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Apollo 13, and the Robert Langdon films. Howard is now the co-chairman of Imagine Entertainment, which has produced 8 Mile, Friday Night Lights, and Arrested Development, which Howard also narrated. In fact, if you've ever seen the narrator Twitter memes, you've probably heard his voice without even realizing it. Howard was also in Jamie Foxx's music video for Blame It in 2009. I know, I couldn't believe it either. Now 69, Howard is worth an estimated $200 million. He's been married to his wife, Cheryl Alley, since 1975. They have 4 children together, including Bryce Dallas Howard and Paige Howard, both actresses in their own right. When his kids would misbehave, he'd even discipline them by grounding them from visiting his sets. Talk about a unique punishment. But nobody logged more total years as a Mayberry resident than Frances Bavier.
Oh! Gave me such a fright.
She played her on-screen character, Aint B, for a total of 10 years. She was 57 when she first appeared in the role, and she has had a complicated relationship with it. Originally from New York City, she felt that a lot of her abilities were being wasted on the character. Still, though, she not only completed the original show's run, but also followed it up with 2 seasons on the show's rebranded continuation, Mayberry RFD. She struggled both on set and after the role had ended. She tended to get upset or frustrated to the point that the cast and crew had to walk on eggshells around her. She and Griffith would get into a lot of fights, but she called him 4 months before she died, apologizing for how difficult she had been to work with. Bavier once said in an interview that she struggled with the fact that she and Aint B became so interchangeable. In her words, it is very difficult for an actress to create a role and to be so identified that you as a person no longer exist, and all the recognition you get is for a part that is created on the screen. Funnily enough, Bavier actually ended up moving to North Carolina, so something about the show must have struck a chord with her. She retired and purchased a home there in 1972, and she lived a very quiet life there until her death in 1989. She'd write letters to fans who asked her for autographs and left a $100,000 trust fund to the Siler City, North Carolina Police. Every December, its interest is divided amongst the employees. She was worth $1.4 million when she died. Viewers of The Andy Griffith Show felt like they, themselves, were citizens of Mayberry, North Carolina. Its larger-than-life characters were played by even larger-than-life people. While the Taylors went on to have intense directorial careers and release gospel albums, Aint B opted for the quieter life, living out a version of her on-screen role until the very end.